Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and today I'm going to tell you how I felt about a movie that came out a few months ago that I'm just getting around to. This is Mortal Kombat Legends: Scorpion's Revenge. I was on the fence about whether or not I was going to bother with this and do a how we felt about, but my son and I have been bonding lately over Mortal Kombat. Yeah, we're bonding over violent video games. Nobody worry, I'm not letting him play the most recent stuff because it's way too insanely brutal and violent, and I'm not letting him watch this movie because a lot of the action is based very much on what the new games look like, all the way down to the X-ray shots when people get, stabbed through the head and hit really hard in the mouth, and places in their face crack and stuff like that. I can't let my kid look at that, but I'm drawing the line at blood in a 16-bit video game, which seemed really rough back in the day and is kind of quaint now in comparison to a lot of the violence that we're seeing. Have I, along with a lot of the culture, gotten too desensitized now, where things that my parents wouldn't have let me look at, I'm letting my kids look at now because maybe the goalpost has moved on this a little bit? I don't know. You be the judge. Everybody's got to make their own decisions for their kids based on maturity level and where they think they are and that sort of thing, and that's where I'm at with it. We've been having a lot of fun with Mortal Kombat. Those games are, particularly the early ones, are like so tongue-in-cheek about the violence. It's insanely over the top, and yes, it's rough and in a lot of places disgusting, and certainly it is it's gratuitous. But it knows what it is. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and that again doesn't mean that my kid's ready to see Goro ripping Jax's arms off like he does in this. Minor spoiler alert, that's how he loses his arms and needs robot arms later. There's stuff like that that's just, there's, spines ripped directly out of people's bodies, and if only the parents that were complaining about Mortal Kombat and persuaded the government to look into this and try to create legislation against allowing these kinds of games being made, or at the very least having a ratings board, which ultimately was the solution. They would have all had a heart attack and died if they saw where we got to now and looked at this movie. So anyway, as I've been looking at more Mortal Kombat stuff with my kid, we have the arcade 1-up machine that has the first 3 games in it, and we've been having a lot of fun with that. Jason's been, researching that a lot. And those games are surprisingly deep for their day. Just all the things that there is to learn and try in those, and unlockable characters and figuring out fatalities and things. That was all stuff that I had friends that were really into when I was a kid, but I never really did a lot of myself. I never really played Mortal Kombat much. I loved fighting games, but I always thought it was too stiff, and I'm coming around on it. I'm starting to really appreciate how it's just paced a little bit differently. And I should say, some of what I'm talking about here is stuff that comes up in a video that Jason and I haven't posted yet because we're pretty far ahead in our recordings for Father and Son. We actually watched the 95, the mid-90s Mortal Kombat movie together and did a video on it, which is not up yet. So I'm recording these out of order. This is going to come up first, but that's part of what made me decide to go ahead and watch this. So this movie purports to be a kind of a character piece for Scorpion. I say character piece in air quotes because nobody, of course, is like super well drawn in this. This is not about a character study so much as it is a device to show a lot of brutal violence and to have a lot of cool stuff animated on screen, certainly. I'm not saying there's no story here at all, but it's pretty typical for a thing based on a video game and for like a fighting game story. Better maybe than it has any right to be, certainly, but you don't come to a thing like this for a super deep story. It'd be really neat if we could get a thing like that with this kind of material, but I was gonna be happy if it was entertaining and fun to watch didn't take itself too seriously, and I could sort of kind of tell what was going on. My issue the first couple times I saw the Mortal Kombat movie, the live action film from the 90s, was I couldn't make heads or tails of some of what was happening. I still have that to some degree, and I have that a little bit with this, but not as much as I did with that movie. And I think I'm appreciating this more than I would have because I just recently saw that, and this is by and large a retelling of that movie. It's kind of an update of that, which is not what I would have expected from that title, and that's kind of the place I want to start. This was a point that Eric made to me after he saw it. We didn't think to even watch this together. I just found out the other day that he happened to have seen this, and so a couple things that I'm going to echo here that he said that I agree with. One of them is that the title he kind of was hoping would lead us to a movie that was mostly about Scorpion and would get like maybe the original tournament from his perspective, or maybe it does, since it decided to kind of tell the story of that first movie again, it might be cool to get it mostly from Scorpion's eyes. He certainly is the catalyst for a lot of things that happen. So I don't go as far as Eric. He says it's not really Scorpion's revenge. I mean, it is. Scorpion does get his revenge in this on the character who kills his family. I won't give away who that is, but it's not who it seems to be initially. And so he bookends the movie. We keep cutting, back to Scorpion quite a bit through the film, but it is much more of a just overall Mortal Kombat story. Again, updating the original tournament with the idea that Shang Tsung has won 9 tournaments for the Outer Realm, and he has to win one more. And if he does that, is it Shao Kahn, his master, will be able to take over the Earth and do whatever he wants to with it. And so Raiden is hoping that some of the more noble characters that he brings into the tournament, because he's kind of like Uatu the Watcher, he's not allowed to interfere with anything, which was not a thing I understood. This might have been true, but it was not a thing I understood in the first movie with Raiden, and so I don't know if that's a change or just a thing I didn't get. I don't know a whole great deal about Mortal Kombat. I'm learning. I'm an absolute novice when it comes to this stuff, so anybody watching this that really knows this material might kind of shake their head at some of the stuff I'm saying. This is me just watching a movie and telling you how I felt about it with my limited knowledge. But I am glad that I saw that movie again recently and that I played some Mortal Kombat games lately, because some of these characters I didn't really know before a few weeks ago. Like, I played the games a couple times and recognized them, but couldn't tell you what their names were. I know most of them now, at least the major players in this. So at least I feel a little bit more articulate than I would have been otherwise. But anyway, so Raiden brings in characters like Johnny Cage and like Liu Kang and Sonya Blade, and is hoping that they can save Earthrealm, but he's not able to come in and do anything until at the end, when the tournament ends somewhat unexpectedly because of some rules that get broken, and then he's allowed to interfere at that point. I wish we had let him do more cool things once that happens. Minor spoilers in this. I won't give away any of the big major stuff. But anyway, so you do get to see Raiden begin to get lightning-y, which, I mean, you would expect to happen somewhere, certainly. But I wish we could have gone a little bit farther with that. But anyway, so very often in the movie I have to kind of remind myself that we've got this like A-story subplot, or I should say main plot, and that at least the movie is kind of trying to treat it like that with Scorpion. But that's not really what it feels like. It sort of feels like Scorpion is actually just a running subplot, and then things will converge at the end where Scorpion will be really important in getting us to the end of the tournament. But very often it feels like an ensemble piece, and I even have to kind of remind myself that the whole thing is not Johnny Cage's movie. He gets as much screen time, maybe more screen time than anybody in this movie, and he is weirdly one of the kind of maybe the biggest weak point, but also some of the best writing comes with him. So I feel really funky about Johnny Cage, and I also don't fully understand what we're doing with him in this movie. So he is irritating. He's meant to be irritating. It goes a lot farther than I want it to. He just won't stop talking, and he's basically a Booster Gold type, and I've never cared for Booster Gold. So the idea is Johnny Cage, it basically, his story is like if you did Galaxy Quest with Mortal Kombat. So he gets called up to go to China and thinks that he's there for a movie, and then he crosses the veil with in the ship with Raiden and the other characters that he's pulled together, and then suddenly he's at the temple where Mortal Kombat's going to happen, and he thinks that he's on a movie set. And he thinks that through a great deal of the movie, and it takes a really long time before he realizes that things are actually real, and that he can get killed doing this. And even at the point that he realizes that, he still thinks it has to have something to do with show business, and of course it doesn't. And there's some good comedy that's played with that, but I think it just goes on too long, and the joke kind of wears thin on me pretty quickly. And he's just, I mean, everybody's an archetype in this, certainly, and that's not really a problem. You expect that with this material. Mortal Kombat, I feel like, is sort of like a Power Rangers thing, where my standards are going to be different for a Mortal Kombat thing than they would be for some other kinds of stories. This is not a straight up typical dramatic narrative, or traditional narrative, I should say. So I'm very often, putting, when we talk about Power Rangers things, putting that in a box and going, this is good for Power Rangers. This is good for Mortal Kombat, or at least what little stuff I've looked at for Mortal Kombat. And I guess the most important thing is just that I did have a lot of fun watching this. I've got issues. I'll bring up some of that stuff, and I will say that some of the fights were just too brutal for my taste. We're getting to a point where you just can't shock people with violence anymore. It's like, once I've seen like the 30th, again, spine pulled out of somebody's neck, arms pulled off, crushing skulls, it just, if it ever did anything for me, it certainly doesn't anymore now. And some of that, I have to confess, I found a little bit boring. There were places where I was kind of tuning out during the action, where I was like, oh yeah, look how brutal it is. We got another insane fatality, and I get it, it's Mortal Kombat. I guess I would blame the more recent games before I would blame this, because it's just doing its violence in line with that stuff, and it's just not cool anymore. We're in a day and age where fewer people are bothered by that, and where we've gotten really pretty desensitized, and it feels easy. In the 90s, it was novel, kind of like Spawn. A lot of things about this movie remind me of Spawn. Scorpion's whole plot is very Spawnish. But anyway, I may get to that again here in a minute. But everything reminds me of Spawn. I spent so much of my life a few years ago reviewing Spawn that everything reminds me of Spawn. But really, this is very Spawnish. But when everything in its dog is doing dystopian fiction and post-apocalyptic fiction, and you've got a lot more, a much larger percentage of bleak television than you have of wholesome television, this stuff just can't really surprise you anymore. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what you do about it. I don't know if you just scale it back and go, we're going to make it more about adventure and interesting characters, and maybe let it be more sophisticated than it ever was before, and make that a little bit more the novelty. And yeah, there's going to be violence, and there's going to be a lot of fighting and stuff, but you're going to be so surprised that you came to a Mortal Kombat thing for violence, and you left with something kind of thought-provoking, that you don't mind that the violence is not insanely shocking, because I don't think it can be. That's not me complaining that this isn't ultra sophisticated, although another point that Eric mentioned the other day when I was talking to him about this was that he thought that this really wanted to be Netflix's Castlevania, which I agree with, having seen it now, and it's not that. And Castlevania is as brutal and violent as this, but is also insanely thought-provoking, and its characters are very often really impressively layered and intelligently written and really sophisticated. And so, yeah, it would be really neat to get that kind of thing for Mortal Kombat. I'm not going to expect that, and I'm certainly not going to expect that from what is essentially a DC direct-to-video movie. This is made by Warner Brothers Animation. I recognized some of the names of producers and animators and people behind the scenes. It's made a lot like one of those, and as one of those, it's one of the better ones in recent years, which is not saying a great deal. Like my standards are somewhat low for those, but this certainly felt like a thing that somebody wanted to make. And I would be surprised if down the road we didn't see some DC crossover with this, as the DC movies are continuing. And considering some of the crossovers we've had in the past, like Batman Ninja Turtles and like Brave and the Bold, Scooby-Doo. So there's precedent for that, and it's really, really easy to do with this. You don't have to worry about rights issues and stuff because we're already doing a lot of crossing with Injustice, and I would be really surprised if they didn't do an Injustice movie after this. And I don't know if that would necessarily include Mortal Kombat characters. I could see doing both. I could see doing a DC versus Mortal Kombat, and I can also see doing an Injustice thing. But anyway, so this is basically one of those. The animation is really solid in this. It is somewhat anime inspired, just like a lot of those things are, which is totally cool and makes a lot of sense for this material. Mortal Kombat comes very much from a samurai movie place, and it's already getting so many Asian influences that it makes a lot of sense that its characters' faces would look kind of anime. I actually like it more with this material than I do with some of the DC stuff when we do that. I always talk about this. We're kind of past, I think, the whole Vaseline on the lens stage with these movies, which is really good. There's not any, weird blurring for no good reason. And so, I'm not having a hard time looking at this. The action is really thrilling and really dynamic, and that's, one of the best things, of course, that it has going for it. It's also really colorful. It's not afraid of splashes of color. And it's well paced. I mean, it's just really fun to watch. But anyway, so initially when it opens, it does feel like it's gonna be more of a piece for Scorpion, like the title suggests, and I think that's why Eric was kind of surprised that it kind of just becomes that first Mortal Kombat movie again, because not just the title, but also it opens with here's our main character, and we just keep getting away from him, constantly, and I keep wanting to get back to Scorpion. And I think this would have been more focused and more interesting if it had just mostly stuck with Scorpion and followed him and not trying to give so many other characters their own arcs. I felt like this was kind of trying to do too much, and I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if the idea was we accidentally wrote a movie that is so Scorpion focused, we decided we better put his name in the title. I mean, the Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge is the single most direct-to-video title I've ever seen, besides Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, which isn't even a direct-to-video movie. But this is, or also X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is not a direct-to-video movie. But it watches like maybe the intention all along was to just set up this universe so they could do more movies later. There's a sequel bait scene at the end that is setting us up for possible sequels, and this was pretty acclaimed from fans. People seem to like this, and I imagine it probably sold okay for this kind of thing. Probably did about as well as the DC movies usually do. I don't know that for sure, but I have heard from a lot of people that saw it, so I mean, people did find out about this and look at it, and so I would be really surprised if they didn't make another one. And so, like I said, it's entirely possible that the idea was always start with Scorpion, but then they kind of ran away with themselves and it wasn't Scorpion focused enough. But I suspect it's the other way. I suspect that they made a movie that bookends with Scorpion, and then they went, oh, you know what, it's Scorpion focused enough, maybe we better put his name in the title. I'm wondering if that's what happened. But anyway, so the opening scene really surprised me, or I guess I should say, the fact that it wasn't what I thought it was really surprised me, because right at the beginning there's this group of assassins that destroys Scorpion's village, whatever his name is before he becomes Scorpion, and his son and his wife get killed, and he goes ballistic and freaks out and kills as many of these assassins as humanly possible, and then he is murdered, and he's murdered by Sub-Zero, it seems. And I really didn't think that's where it was going at all. At first, I thought that what we were looking at was Scorpion's father raising Scorpion. I thought the kid was going to become Scorpion, because his father gives him this whole legend of the Scorpion, and is talking about how the Scorpion survives through willpower, which is kind of an odd notion, but okay, and I guess that's supposed to be his kind of big driving force through the movie, and his gimmick is willpower, and so he always wins, ultimately, even if he dies and has to be brought back to life, because he just wants revenge and wants whatever he wants more than anybody else does, I guess is the idea. Again, not a lot of super, deep ideas in this movie. And so I was surprised that the kid doesn't end up becoming Scorpion. I was also surprised to see what happens to the kid and how much we show it on screen. This movie is not afraid of offending anybody, which I could see why some people might be offended by a couple things in this movie and be bothered by them. On the other hand, like I said, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and I kind of appreciate how unabashed it is and how it's just not afraid of anything. It's very not PC, and not in a try to hurt people's feelings, try to offend people way. It just is what it is, and if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. I mean, that seems to be its attitude, and I kind of have a lot of respect for that. I'm surprised that Johnny Cage in this day and age is as much of a womanizer as he is, and I mean, he has to pay for that, but the movie's not advocating for that. It's not saying it's okay that he's acting the way he is, but it plays for comedy in a way that movies used to do that and seem to be kind of afraid to do now a lot. And again, it's not saying I'm supposed to like this character because he's a little sexist. It just is actually allowing itself to portray that and then letting him pay for it. And I don't know, that's just a thing that lately I've not been seeing as much of, so I guess I kind of appreciated that. That's just me. But I want to get to Johnny Cage for a second, because like I said, I had a really weird experience with him. I found him really obnoxious, and I didn't always love it when he was on screen. There are things about him that won me over, though. He has, like I said earlier, some of the best lines in the movie, and one of them, again, I'll do some minor spoilers, but there's this. So he still thinks. I think maybe my favorite scene in the movie is when he is running away from Baraka. Baraka comes and attacks him. This is part of the actual tournament. There's a lot of fights in this that aren't in the tournament, but this gets into the tournament section, and he is running from Baraka and thinks that the whole thing is staged and that this guy's just a method actor, which is kind of amusing. And he has this line where he says, "This better not be direct-to-video," which is a great meta joke, because it is. And also at the end of that scene, there's a big fire that he has to go through, and he sits in a tree after he gets out of it, and he just looks right past the camera and says "toasty." And I was really impressed that we could get a reference to that whole thing. If you've played the Mortal Kombat games, particularly 2 and 3, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I've never understood why this is in those games, but one of the producers of that has this weird thing where whenever you pull off certain moves, he'll go "toasty." I've never understood that, but okay. And I walked into this kind of wondering if we would get a reference to that, and I was really surprised that it was as believable a moment as it is. Like, it actually works. The context of it makes sense, and so I thought that was kind of clever, and I really liked that. But what I don't get about Johnny Cage is that he's different from in the film, where he's kind of angsty in that, because I'm talking about the mid-90s movie, because nobody believes that he is actually a real martial artist and that he does his own stunts. And he's having to kind of prove to people as a superstar movie actor that he actually knows what he's doing with regards to martial arts. And in this, it's almost the opposite, where he doesn't do his own stunts, and he almost brags about that, and he's not a fighter. And then in the third act, all of a sudden, he's fighting, and he's been holding that back the whole time. He's actually really good at it. And I don't know why he's hiding that, and why he pretends like he's not good at it. I just don't know what the point of that is. And so I'm not sure totally what his arc is supposed to be. I don't know if it's supposed to be a confidence thing. It doesn't watch that way. It doesn't seem like he's ever lacking in confidence. If anything, he's overconfident. There's not really a plot point about him being insecure and like suddenly getting over that, and like you know, using maybe innate skills he has, or skills that he's just afraid to show off for some reason. I don't know. I don't really know what's going on with that, except to just have kind of a superficial reveal where we're wondering the whole movie why in the world he's there, and then he's this really great kick-ass fighter, and we go, oh, okay, I see why he's there. I mean, yeah, but why were you hiding it? I don't really understand that. So the reason it's a lot like Spawn is because it is a character goes to hell, makes a deal with the devil, comes back and tries to get his revenge in order to see his family again story. I mean, it's in that way exactly Spawn. So Scorpion goes to the Nether Realm, I think it's called. There's a moment where he says, "Am I in hell?" And the like devil guy who has kind of manipulated things to get him there in the first place, which is also, depending on what part of the Spawn comics you're reading, is very Malbolgia also, where it's like he's been, you know, working behind the scenes all along to do this to Al Simmons, and that's very much what we have here. That's Quan Chi, who I think is the most recent addition to Mortal Kombat that is a major character in this. Nearly everybody else is classic Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 characters. There's very few main characters in this, anyway, that come from 3 and beyond. There's a few, and there's some cameos and things. I think there's a couple of characters that don't even appear until later, but that character is I think a Mortal Kombat 4 creation. I think I read that it was even in something right before that, one of the like side games, I forget what. But anyway, that's, like I said, Quan Chi, and so he's been manipulating things to get Scorpion you know, to hell, and then to go to the tournament in order to steal a key. Like, it's a real convoluted plan, as these things often are, to steal a key to unlock, because fighting game terminology, I guess, in order to rescue his master, who is in captivity. And if he can do that, he promises that Scorpion will be able to be reunited with his family and you know, live happily ever after, or whatever. Which, of course, he's probably never going to actually deliver on. But that's what he's trying to give him. And then when we get to the end, Scorpion finds, you know, a way basically to break the rules. And I like that Scorpion's a character that just will not play other people's games. He pretends to a little bit, but at the end of the day, he's going to live his life, or I guess his afterlife, on his own terms. I guess that's the one, you know, character trait that I can you know, find like really endearing and sympathetic about the Scorpion. He is just a revenge character. You've got Liu Kang, who is supposed to be our like stalwart, always does the right thing kind of character, who's telling him that revenge is not the answer. And at the end, more or less, revenge kind of is the answer, although Scorpion does ultimately kind of choose the right side, I suppose. But he is very much an anti-hero. At no point is Scorpion like actually in the Liu Kang category. He is, you know, dubious at best, I guess. He's very much out for himself, I should say. But anyway, like I said, I'm feeling it. Those are kind of the big main highlights, I suppose. I enjoy that, just like the 95 movie, there are a couple places where we get somebody saying finish him and things like that. This knows that it's a fighting game. It's constantly got fun references. It's got fatalities. Like I said, it's got those X-ray moments. It does that too often. It goes to slow motion a little too often for my taste. But I also really enjoyed a lot of places where I recognized like backgrounds from arenas that it was borrowing from the games and homaging. There's a place where we're on a, I won't give away the context of this, but there's a place where we're on a bridge, and one of our characters drops on, or I should say, more than one, but there's characters that drop onto a big spike that's underneath it. That's a big classic Mortal Kombat thing, and I just recognized a lot of things in this, and it was a lot of fun seeing all those things taken from the games and put into a dramatic narrative. But anyway, so yeah, overall I enjoyed this. It's very silly in its way, certainly. Like I said, it's good for Mortal Kombat, and I won't even get into plot holes and things. I mean, that's easy, low-hanging fruit. The first movie's like that. You kind of expect that. Like I said, it's like Power Rangers. You're gonna have that kind of stuff. But it entertained me, and that's honestly all it really has to do. So thanks a lot for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you've seen this movie, leave your comments. Let me know what you thought of it, and in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan, and I will see you again real shortly with more videos here on YouTube. Bye, folks.